Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Really excited about today's topic. We are going to be talking about nutrient timing to overcome menopause symptoms. I mean, so many of you guys are dealing with issues as you go through this stage of perimenopause into menopause. And then there's younger women there as well that are listening that are dealing with issues with your menstrual cycle. We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about the best foods, fasting strategies, nutrient timing, how to use diet variation and other advanced strategies to help optimize your hormones so you can have a great cycle and really feel great throughout your whole monthly schedule. So you don't have that 1 week where you have headaches and you need to lay in bed. As you're going through perimenopause and into menopause, your days aren't blasted by hot flashes. You're not being kept up all night with these unwanted symptoms. And so we have got a great expert. This is Dr. Mindy Pelz, and she has got a great podcast as well that you guys should check out, the Resetter podcast. She's called The Reset Doc, and she's the author of a great book, The Menopause Reset, that if you're watching on video, I've got right here. Really small book, easy read, but a lot of great tips. And we're going to go through that in this interview. And she also has a couple other books, The Reset Factor and The Reset Kitchen. And you can find her at drmindypelz.com. So Dr. Mindy, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm a huge fan. I love what you're doing in the world. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Yeah, we were just catching up that we have a very similar past involved in a lot of the same organizations. She has her original training in chiropractic, just like I do. And Dr. Pompa, who's been a guest on this podcast, was a mentor for both of us.
Yep.
And so, yeah, a lot of similarities. We also have a mutual friend in Ben Azadi, who's been on this podcast as well. So
Yeah.
great.
He's
Well, let's talk about
amazing too.
well,
He's doing his Keto Flex idea is amazing
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we talked about his book, Keto Flex. In fact, when I bought your book, I actually bought his and yours together, right? So I got
Awesome.
the combo. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And so let's talk about your story. And, in your book, you talk about as you went through this transition into menopause, what was happening. And so I think our audience will really get a lot out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an interesting story because I was raised by a health food nut mom, and I've been in the health world for, forever. And when I hit 40, I truly thought that health was fitting into my skinny jeans, feeling good, a number on the scale. And, how I achieved that was through working out a lot, eating 6 meals a day. I thought I was definitely on that path of the more you eat, the faster your metabolism would be. And so at 40, I felt great. And by 43, I was not great. I had hot flashes so bad at night. I couldn't sleep. I was anxious and depressed, even felt suicidal. Like I felt like somebody had hijacked my brain. And all my old tricks weren't working. And I tried exercising more. I tried eating less. I tried, paleo, like everything I could do to get my hormones back on track. But it just kept getting worse. So that's when I went looking for answers. And originally, this is kind of the interesting part of the story, is it got so bad that I was like, I'll take a pill. And I'm like a purist. I'm not I haven't taken medication in like 30 years. But it was bad enough that I'm like, I need a pill at this point. So I went to a friend who was an OB, and I asked her, I was like, what should I do? This is really bad. And she said, Mindy, my medical textbooks have failed me. I literally have a practice full of women like you, and I have no idea what to do. And that really launched me into discovering 5 key things that needed to change in my lifestyle when I hit 40 that I didn't do. And I started to put my own health back with lifestyle tools, which is really what we all should do, right? We should start with lifestyle and then from there build. And so that's what I did. And I'm 51, and my symptoms are gone. And by 47, my cycle was more regular. It was like I would look like I was going into menopause, and then I came out of menopause. And I've really used lifestyle to navigate this time.
Wow, praise God. Well, what a great story there. And so many women have gone through that as well, where they feel like they're healthy, then all of a sudden they hit a wall as they get into their 40s. I hear that all the time. And so what's happening there? What's happening with the hormone changes that take place during perimenopause?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And so many women, including myself, don't know when you hit 40, there's going to be a dramatic shift in how your body functions.
Mm.
And prior to my menopause experience, I pretty much thought menopause was like a switch you turned on and off. Like one day you had your cycle, the next day you did it. And I couldn't have been further from the truth. So at 40, your ovaries start making a slow and steady decline. And that takes about 10 to 15 years where they stop making, depending on how many eggs you have, they stop making the sex hormones. They don't make as much estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. But your body still needs those sex hormones. You're not going to get it as much at 55 as you did at 35. So it hands over the job of making sex hormones to another organ. And the organ that it hands it over to are the adrenals.
Mm.
Well, if we were to like go and look at every 42, 43-year-old woman, what is she? Most of them have kids that they're raising that are still young. A lot of them have careers. They're balancing family and work. A lot of them, and I'm sure you see this, are chronic exercisers. So they're running marathons, and there is just an overabundance of stress on their body. So when this handoff takes place, the body's ill-equipped, and all of a sudden now those hormones become lower than they need to be.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. And people start noticing these symptoms. And, estrogen, progesterone obviously are the main hormones. There's a lot of talk about estrogen dominance, right? But both of the
Yeah.
hormones are going down. Is progesterone going down more for many people than estrogen?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look at the perimenopause, and the reason I called it the menopause reset is because the
Yeah.
funny thing about menopause is we've got peri, we have the middle, and we have
Right.
post. So I look at menopause as just this experience as your ovaries start to decline. But in the beginning years of the ovaries handing over the job to the adrenals, with estrogen, you actually have moments where estrogen's really high and then
Mm.
estrogen's really low. So there are several years where it's going up and down. So you feel normal, you might feel too much estrogen, then all of a sudden you feel not enough. So that's sort of the original place that estrogen goes. But progesterone at 40 starts to just decline. And this is the challenge, is that progesterone keeps estrogen in check. So if progesterone goes away, now you got yourself a problem because estrogen can get more out of control. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
high, sometimes it's low. I will tell you the surprising thing that I've seen. We've run thousands of hormone tests on women over 40. Very few of them have too much estrogen. They have the
Mm.
wrong estrogens, but most of them don't
Right.
have enough estrogen.
Right. 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 And you're using a Dutch test, right? The
Yeah,
dried urine
yeah,
test. Yeah.
yeah. Love
And so
that
you're
test.
looking at the three different components of estrogen. And so, yeah, like you said, very few people are having too much estrogen, but there are certain subunits of estrogen that promote more growth than
Yeah,
others, right? So
yeah.
they kind of amplify what's happening with estrogen more than others, but the overall quantity is typically, within line, if not low.
Right. Yeah, and that's, I think, why the Dutch test is like, I have a vision every woman over 40 gets one every year.
Yeah.
We've been very focused on mammograms and other tests,
Mm.
but that'll tell you when disease has hit. How about we start to show women when disease is building? And
Yeah.
the Dutch test does that. So estrogen is so fascinating because you could walk into your OB's office on any random day and they could take a blood sample of your and read your hormones, but most of the time you will not get a clear idea of what types of estrogen you are low in. And to your point, you have protective estrogens and you have harmful estrogens. So the crazy thing about hormones is it's the balance. It's like a
Yeah.
moving target. We don't just say, oh, it should be this, and if it's not this, you're off. We say, okay, here's what it should be at certain times of the month, and here's what those should break down into. And that's why I like the Dutch test, because it'll show you what it's breaking down into. And honestly, I think we would prevent breast cancer, ovarian
Hmm.
cancer, if women knew what their estrogen was breaking into.
Yeah, because you could see a lot of trends. Things are
Yeah.
trending in a certain direction, and you're looking at physiology there. So a mammogram is looking at structure. It's looking at anatomy, basically. but it's not actually looking at the active physiology that's taking place. And so when you're able to have, whether it's a mammogram or a thermogram, which is, something that we prefer, it's less invasive,
Mhm.
thermography, and then also be able to couple that with the physiology, that's, very, very helpful. And
Yeah,
so
it's
let's
huge.
move into nutrition. How does nutrition impact this sort of estrogen progesterone balance?
Yeah. Well, so what was interesting for me when I went into my 40s was I was paleo. So I
Mm.
was sort of watching keto from the edge, but I was more like paleo, which meant eat a lot of protein in the paleo
Yeah.
I did. Like take the
Hmm.
carbs out, but eat a ton of protein.
Hmm.
So I was doing that a little too much. And what I found is that I actually responded differently to my foods at different times of my cycle. And this is another thing that I do not understand why we're not teaching women. Again had to put it together in my own journey. But when you are trying to make estrogen, which is the beginning part of your menstrual cycle, paleo, keto, all those low carb, carnivore, all those low carb types of diets will do very, very well.
Hmm.
Estrogen wants you to be insulin sensitive. The
Yeah.
reason we have PCOS so high, infertility, so many hormonal challenges is because of insulin resistance. So that front half of your cycle when you're making estrogen, you're going to be great. Like if you are doing keto, if you are
Hmm.
fasting. And so I had to figure that piece out. But the back half of the site of your cycle, especially the week before your period, you're
Mm.
making progesterone. Progesterone does not want any stressors.
Yeah.
Progesterone doesn't want you doing keto. Progesterone wants you leaning into things like squashes and potatoes and tropical fruits, citrus fruits, beans. These are not keto foods, which is why we have to start to learn how to go in and out
Mm.
of when to use it as a tool and when not to use it. And for me, when I found fasting, I just started fasting all the time until I realized that I was making progesterone really, really bad. So
Yeah.
I had to come in with more of a cycle syncing and figure out how to go in and out of keto, in and out of fasting.
Yeah, because there's really an art to it. And I think that's really one of the big mistakes that people make in the nutrition world is they hear about all the great benefits of something and then it's like all or none. It's
Yep.
like you're either keto or you're not, right? And if you do
So
something that
true.
knocks you out of ketosis, that's
Yeah.
like, an unforgivable sin. That's a terrible
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
And you're either intermittent fasting every day or you're not, right?
Yeah.
And, I think
So
as
true.
we're really defining this, as we're evolving in our understanding of this, and you're obviously one of the leaders in that, we're realizing, yeah, it's not true. These are great tools, but we have to really understand when to use it, when not to,
Yep.
and just it's kind of crafting the art of it. And so
Yeah.
let's talk about like in a typical 28-day cycle, and you can give kind of points of what that looks like when we should be timing out maybe low carb, keto kind of style dieting, fasting, and then when we need to start implementing more of these higher carb foods or feasting and applying some of those principles.
Yeah, it's such a great conversation. And I feel like, I don't know if you're having this experience, the more I talk about women's hormones and how to time their lifestyle to the hormones that come and go, women are like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Why was I not taught this at 13? And,
Yeah.
it's a massively missing conversation in women's
Mm.
health. So I came up with something what I call the fasting circle, and I'm actually just put it in another book that we'll see when that one comes out, but it's
Hmm.
finished, and I'm teaching the principle in my academy. And the idea is that you look at the different days of your monthly cycle, you look at the hormones that are being produced, you look at the organs that are producing them, and then you adapt your eating and your fasting to it.
Mm.
You can even adapt your exercise to it. And it looks something like this. So on day 1 through day 10, you are trying to make estrogen. That is bottom line. Your body's building estrogen up. Now, what's really interesting is that hormones pulse. They're not
Yeah.
like they turn on and turn off, like they pulse. And as you get closer to day 10, they pulse even more. So you're building estrogen and you need your brain to be healthy. You need the hypothalamus, the pituitary to be healthy, and you need to be insulin sensitive.
Yeah.
So in that time, go keto, do your 3-day water fast, stimulate autophagy so you can clean out the hypothalamus and the
Mm.
pituitary, but focus on insulin sensitivity. Then as you move into day
Now,
11-ish,
day one is the first day of menstruation. So basically, like
good
right when
point.
you start
Yeah.
menstruating,
Yeah.
there might be some men that are listening that are not familiar with that. I know before I got into, into this stuff in depth, I was like, what is a 28-day cycle?
Right?
Uh,
So
so day
true.
one is the first day of menstruation. So right when you start menstruating, you're saying go low carb,
Yeah.
intermittent fasting, maybe even an extended or partial fast in that period of time. That's a
Yeah.
really good idea.
And you know what's really weird is if you talk to a lot of women, they'll say, "Oh my God, that makes so much sense. I actually don't want to eat once my period starts."
Mm,
It's like when
yeah,
you go back to the
intuitive.
intelligence of the body, it's already been giving you clues your whole life. You just have been taught by society to do something different.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the beginning part. Then here's what's interesting, ovulation, and I actually now I'm calling it the manifestation phase because literally from about day 11 to day 15, you have all your hormones surging. You have
Mm,
estrogen at its peak, you have testosterone at its peak, and a little bit of progesterone. So estrogen makes us articulate. It keeps our hair full and our skin shiny. It gives it's a precursor to serotonin, so it makes us feel really good. Testosterone is our motivation and our libido. So you got all these coming together in this strange little 4-day period. So I always say use those. Like let's figure out how to use them. Now, here's what's interesting. Just because you make a hormone doesn't mean you're going to break that hormone down and you're going to
mm,
use it. So, in this ovulation window, or what I call manifestation phase, you can start to lean into more like foods that will support your gut. You have a whole set of bacteria in your gut that will break estrogen down. So, more fibrous foods, polyphenol, prebiotic foods are phenomenal there. You can still stay keto, fine.
mm.
I don't recommend women go longer than intermittent fasting in this little phase.
Yeah.
I wouldn't throw a 3-day water fast in there at that
Mhm.
point. And I don't know, I'd be curious your opinion on this. I actually really like the idea, if you want to experiment with carnivore, go carnivore during that time and then up your weight workouts so that you're trying to
Mm.
build more muscle because you have more testosterone. So use the testosterone that you're already being given in this strange little 4-day period.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I've actually taught something similar where I'll use, I'll have them do like one feast day in that period of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think resistance training is a great idea. And that's also a really good idea. Or that period of time, usually women are very mentally alert. So it's a great time if you've
Yes.
got to get projects done,
Yep.
things like that. Typically, I need a
So
little bit
true.
less sleep during that period of time.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
it's a really great time to, if you're timing things out, if you have presentations or whatever it is, that's a really great
So
period of
true.
time there.
Yeah, I always say if you want to ask for a raise, time it with your
You're most
cycle.
confident then. Yeah.
Yeah. You're the most confident.
Yeah.
And you talk to any woman that'll say, "Yeah, there's times that I'm just talking and the words are coming out really well and sometimes they're not." And it's if they start to look at that
Mm,
pattern, it's usually in the manifestation phase. So,
yeah. Interesting. Yep.
and weight wise, you could do heavier weights. I've been with my academy members. We've been kind of testing this out. So for women that want to build muscle, which is a big deal for a woman over 40
Yeah.
because you start to lose muscle, we'll find that little 5-day window and really up your weights, move away from
Mm,
cardio. The first part of your
mhm,
cycle, do all the cardio you want, but that manifestation little window, make sure you're upping your weights because you have so much
mm.
testosterone. It'll help you with building muscles.
That's a great idea. I hadn't really thought about it, but I like that.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out why we always look at our workouts on a weekly cycle. I actually
Right.
think women should look at their workouts on a monthly cycle.
Hmm.
So it's really fascinating once you start to see how you can map everything to this.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
So after that, then there's another time that all those hormones dip again. And it's about another 5-day period when you come out of ovulation or manifestation phase. And that you can go back into keto. You can go and do a longer fast, no problem. But so that's about day 15 to day 18, 19.
Hmm.
Around day 19, your body's really going to start making progesterone. And that is where you absolutely need to step out of keto.
Mm.
If you're fat adapted, you could do like 13 hours of fasting. But other than that, I really like people to lean into the squashes and the beans and potatoes of all different kinds. And don't lean into yoga at that time. Don't run your marathon. Don't increase your weights. Try to stay really cortisol spike free, because
Mm.
progesterone does not want you to spike cortisol. If you spike cortisol in any way, whether it's fasting, working out, life, running a marathon, then you're going to tank your progesterone.
Yeah, because progesterone and cortisol have the same precursor, pregnenolone. And
Right.
so that concept of, there's a concept in functional medicine called pregnenolone steal, where basically if you have to produce a lot of cortisol, which cortisol is a stress hormone, to elevate your blood sugar, if you have to produce a lot of that, you're going to basically be taking that precursor pregnenolone and shunting it into cortisol. And so you're going to produce a lot less progesterone during that period of time. So you're saying keep stress down, make sure to keep your blood sugar balanced, really prioritize good sleep,
Yep.
eat these natural foods, like, for example, wild yam, or yam,
Yeah.
like naturally has progesterone in it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So it's a
Right.
progesterone boosting food.
Yeah, when I started to look into this, I all of a sudden realized that yams are like the greatest tool for
Mm.
a menopausal woman, because not only are they yummy, personally, I think, but
Yeah.
also they are going to help you build progesterone. And I honestly think in this day and age, in this modern world, women need to nurture progesterone more than any other hormone. We
Mm.
we talk so much about estrogen and estrogen dominance, but really, we could come at estrogen dominance from a different angle, and that's by nurturing progesterone.
Yeah.
So I really
Now, are
like,
all the root vegetables good progesterone builders? So your beets, your carrots, sweet potatoes, potatoes, right? All those types of root
yeah,
vegetables.
yeah, squashes, all different
Squash.
types.
Yep.
So, and there's a lot of different squashes, just like there's a lot of different sweet potatoes and yams. So
Hmm.
when we go to the market, I try to not buy the same yam over and over and over again. I'll
Yeah.
get the purple one, the white one.
Mm.
Same thing with squash. I love butternut squash, but then
Yeah.
I'll throw in acorn and honey nut squash. So I try to keep that variety going, not only for progesterone building, but also it improves diversity of the microbiome.
That's good. Now, you were saying starting around day 19 or day 20. I always thought, because I've always been teaching kind of the last week. So like day 22, starting there, increasing carbs, but you're seeing that starting it a little bit earlier is even more
Yeah.
beneficial.
Yeah, day 21 is when
Yeah.
progesterone should peak. So,
Okay.
depending on
Mm.
how low your progesterone is, I want women doing a couple of days to be able to fuel that. If
Yeah.
you ran a Dutch test and you know your progesterone's good, then you could probably just start on day 21. But if you
Okay.
ran a Dutch test and your progesterone's really low, then you really want to start a little earlier.
That's a really good nuance right there. So
Yeah.
understanding where your levels are based around the Dutch test. And the Dutch test, you're taking that test at a certain time in your cycle too. So that way you're comparing apples to apples with that.
Yeah, yeah. Again, once I did my own Dutch test, it was such a helpful tool, and I started to be able to
Mhm.
time everything because I knew where my hormones were at. So I was able to look at the lifestyle and the fasting and eating that needed to match that. So it's such a beautiful test.
Yeah, it really helps you map it out. So, and this is great insight into how to analyze that and understand your nutrient timing with it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, we mentioned the progesterone building foods, those root vegetables. I think you mentioned beans in there as well. How about estrogen building foods?
Yeah, so estrogen building is interesting because you have the positive estrogen building foods that are like the phytoestrogens, and we'll
Mhm.
talk about that in a minute. You also have estrogen being built by bad activities like, the endocrine disruptors and all the estrogen
Right.
mimickers that are in our. So what I've heard from a lot of women is they go, "Oh, I don't want to become estrogen dominant." So I just want to point out that building phytoestrogens, building the healthy estrogens is not going to make you estrogen dominant. If anything, it's going to actually do the opposite, because the
Hmm.
good estrogen will help with keeping the bad ones at bay. So just another nuanced moment that I think I've heard a lot of women get concerned about doing things like soybeans. Okay,
Hmm.
well, organic, non-GMO soybeans can be good for increasing your phytoestrogen levels.
Hmm.
Awesome. Don't do them a lot, but throw them into the mix. All your flax oils, flax seeds, flax
Hmm.
oil in general is phenomenal. Even we've even experimented with some of like black cumin oil. We've looked at, we have a product that we like called, are you familiar with Andreas seed oils? The five
I
seed
think I've
oil.
heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, where they put
What's in that? The 5 seed oil.
the five. Actually, I got some right here. Oh no, this
It's got
one's
what?
it's
Flax.
yeah, flax,
And
sunflower, safflower, coriander, black sesame, cumin,
hmm.
a little bit of hemp. So
Okay. Yeah.
and then they cold pressed them, and they're organic, so they're non-inflammatory. So I actually have women do it like supplements. They just
Hmm.
put a little scoopful and a couple times a day, especially when they're trying to build estrogen. Those seed oils, the healthy seed oils, can be phenomenal.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. Seeds are like the fertility element of, a plant, right? So
Right,
you would think that it would help boost fertility, right? And so
right.
estrogen building has to do with it's during that follicular phase for boosting fertility. Now, do you recommend estrogen building foods at a particular time, like during that period of time when you're really building up your estrogen,
Yeah.
or would you just do those, throughout the whole cycle?
Well, again, if you know you're low in the protective ones, you would do it throughout
Yeah.
your whole cycle. But remember that estrogen is going to be at its highest about day 11, 12.
Yeah.
So day 9, you might start upping
Mm.
those oils a little bit more. So and
Again,
if you
another good
look at
nuance.
yeah, if you look at how estrogen pulses, it kind of like
Mhm.
pulses in slowly day 1 through day 10. About day 8, I should say, it just starts going really fast. And that's when
Mm.
you would want to lean into the more of those oils.
Yeah, really good insight here. Now, let's talk about how a ketogenic diet can help improve the menopausal transition.
Yeah. Well, so I found keto because I was doing paleo and I had so
Yeah.
many hot flashes, and I now look back on it and I'm like, I think I was definitely doing more protein, too much
Mm.
protein. So I'm sure your listeners know this, but protein's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you can do it in excess.
Mhm.
So I was like protein all day long. So when I switched over to the ketogenic diet, the hot flashes went away. And the thing about hot flashes that are so interesting is that it's the up and down of estrogen that triggers the hypothalamus to raise its temperature. So you're
Mm.
getting a hot flash because of estrogen being out of control. So when I switched from paleo to keto, that went away. It was
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Because we know that like insulin surges, which you can get from like even like a whey protein shake or something like that.
Yeah.
So insulin surges cause estrogen surges.
Yeah.
And so we want to keep the insulin really balanced and steady. So when we eat a meal, we see just a nice kind of gradual little rise of insulin, which is normal and healthy, but we don't want these big spikes, that take place. And obviously, like if you're under stress, if you're not consuming enough healthy fats, like, that's probably what the case was. Because typically protein keeps insulin stable, but you
Right.
probably weren't getting enough fats in there, and possibly your body you may have been consuming certain types of proteins that were causing more of a spike, and that may have help balance that out.
Yeah. You know what? One thing I learned recently, I put a CGM on me.
Hmm.
I'm sure,
Yeah,
surely
I've
you've
done that.
worn
Yeah.
one. And I put one on a couple of years ago, and I saw that protein really spiked
Mm.
my blood
Any
sugar.
type of protein or specific
It
types?
was all protein.
Wow,
Like,
really?
yeah. But check this
Hmm.
out. Because of all the fasting variations that I've
Yeah.
done, recently I put one on this year, and protein actually made my blood sugar go down.
Mm. So
And
you've obviously healed metabolically.
that's right.
Yeah.
it was really interesting. So now I will cycle in on protein. Like I do more of my nature's carbs the week before my cycle, and then I will cycle more protein days to
Mm,
help with just building muscle in general is kind of what I
yeah.
go into.
Yeah.
So
And in nature, typically your protein is coming with fat, right? So if you
yeah,
eat,
well
if
said.
you eat animal, animal food, you're getting fat and protein together. But in our society, we can process protein down, or we can eat like egg whites or something like that,
Right.
and just really specifically just consume protein without really a lot of that fat that helps keep that blood sugar and insulin stable.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and I've actually gotten really nuanced with the protein too. So if you look at the research, it shows that protein every couple hours, and this is for both men and women.
Hmm.
Protein, about 20 grams of protein every 2 to 3 hours, is the most efficient way to stimulate mTOR.
Hmm.
So when we're
Yeah.
looking at fasting, what we're doing is we're most of the time stimulating autophagy. So you're cleaning that cell
Ah.
out, you're making it more efficient. Well, when we go to stimulate mTOR, which is the opposite of autophagy, if we do it with very clear cycling of protein, we can actually build more muscle.
Mhm.
And you can combine that with a woman's ovulation cycle, and now you have a 45-year-old woman that can build muscle like nobody's business. So
Mm.
there's fun little ways we can hack our hormones and hack these different incredible mechanisms in our cells. And protein has a time and place, and if you approach it from a protein cycling point of view, it's really fun to watch how much more you get out of your muscle building
Mm.
workouts.
Yeah, it's kind of what I like to do. I like to do like a now I'm a man, so different rules apply, but
Yeah.
I like to do like an 18-hour fast on a daily basis. And then I lift weights 5 days a week, and I lift at the end. So like I'll lift weights today around 12 o'clock, break my fast around 1 o'clock. And and then after that, I have protein, and I usually two big meals, but sometimes I'll have like a third little kind of protein snack, like some Paleo Valley meat sticks or something like
Oh, I
that.
love those.
Those are great, right?
Those are
So
my favorite.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I noticed just phenomenal results, like keeping
Yeah.
my eating window tight. But when I do eat, really hitting that protein. I follow personally a higher protein diet. I'm consuming about a gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Yeah.
But it's only in a tight window, right? And then
Right.
I've got that long fasting window to really recycle all those proteins and break down all the damaged cells
Yes.
and cellular organelles.
Yeah. I like working out in a fasted state. So if your listeners are
Mhm.
not working out, and it doesn't matter what time of your cycle,
Yeah.
if you look at cortisol's pattern, cortisol is the highest 2 hours after you get up.
Mhm.
Personally, and especially for women, I think we should be working out then,
Mm. Yeah.
because if you don't use cortisol, you'll store cortisol. And most of the time it gets stored around your belly.
Yeah.
So if you work out fasted in the morning, and then when in your recovery meal you do protein, now you've done the best of both worlds, because you've gone in fasted, you're going after those glycogen stores, you're stimulating autophagy, hopefully with your workout and with fasting, and then you're replenishing with mTOR. That's a pretty magical combination for to get that kind of lean muscular look.
Mm. Yeah, that's good. So you work out in the morning when your
Yep.
cortisol's high. See,
Yep.
I think you can use that cortisol for multiple different things. I definitely think, especially if you deal with blood sugar issues like high blood sugar in the morning, getting out and like walking to kind
Yeah.
of get some of that can be really good. For me, I use that cortisol for like maximal performance. Like I get my best work done
Mm,
in the mornings. And then as like I'm getting tired of working, then I work out. That's typically
right.
how I like to do it. But I used to be a morning workout person too. But
Yeah.
yeah, try to use that cortisol for something productive, right?
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah,
waste
but
it.
and I want to just point out though, this is the difference between men and women, because you're getting testosterone every 2 hours.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so
Yep.
testosterone can kick in and kind of give you some motivation. For
Yeah.
women, and especially perimenopausal, menopausal women, testosterone's tanking as well. So we got to kind of ride the cortisol
Mm.
wave to get some energy to work out. And I hear
Yep.
this a lot with women. I've discovered it in my own self, which is, as testosterone goes down, your motivation to work out goes down. And so you got to hold on to anything you can to motivate
Yeah.
yourself to move.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Now, in your book, you also talk about a lot of different types of fasts. And I'd love to dive into that a little bit
Yeah.
because you have a whole
Yeah.
bunch of different types of fasts, like the autophagy fast, things like that. And you experiment with all of these as well
Oh
with your
yeah.
group, with your resetter group, and then kind of doing that throughout, different phases of the cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. So there, right. Lately I've evolved from even what I wrote in the book and really kind of keeping it simple for people that I feel like there are 6 fasts and then I'll
Mhm.
kind of throw in some bonus ones that
Yeah.
are a little more fringe and they're all timed. And the way to look at this is the longer you go without food, the more healing mechanisms kick in. And I think that's probably the most important thing for people to realize is that your body heals when you take food out of the equation. So 15 hours is 13 to 15 is intermittent fasting.
Mhm.
The best study on this for women, I think, is the one done on it was thousands of women. They looked at that after they had gone through chemotherapy for breast cancer, and they found out that if women did as little as 13 hours of intermittent fasting after traditional cancer care, their reoccurrence of that breast cancer was 70% less. 70%
Mm.
less. I just
Wow.
want to point that out than
Yeah,
women who didn't do that. And they're even teaching this at Kaiser now. I have a couple of my patients that
that's
went to
great.
an, I know, amazing, right?
Mhm.
So that's magical time. You get growth hormone, then your inflammation starts to come down. Your body's like just getting used to burning fat. So
Yeah.
that's your 13 to 15-hour
And
window.
that's really easy to do. It's really more mindfulness, right?
Super
Because
easy.
like if you're
Yeah.
staying up late at night and you're, might have a tendency to like emotionally eat and binge.
Yep.
But it's really just mindfulness. You finish dinner, let's say 6, 7, 8 p.m., and then you just don't eat until, 7, 8, 9 a.m. the next day, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. And you hydrate in the morning. That's what I always tell
Yep.
people, hydrate when you
Yeah.
first wake up. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
good.
what's interesting about fasting, I'm sure you experienced this as well, is because your body is made to fast, it's not like any other diet you've ever done. So you just are switching the fuel source and now your body's like over here in fat burning mode and it knows what to do and the longer you fast, the more it can do.
Mhm.
So what I hear from especially women is there's like a fear, but the fear goes away once you understand the body knows what to do.
Yeah.
I think that is helpful. So the next fast that I like to share and is one of my favorite is is what I call autophagy fasting. So at 17 hours, the cells will start to kick a mechanism called autophagy. I think autophagy got really known as being like detox for the cell, but it's more than that. Because it can't detox man-made chemicals. It
Mm.
can
Yeah.
detox viruses and bacteria, but really what happens at 17 hours is it starts to clean its act up. Like
Mm.
the cell starts to repair itself, which is so
Yeah.
cool.
So cool.
So,
Yep.
right? It's really neat. I even saw some really profound research last October showing that if a virus comes into a cell
Mhm.
that's in a state of autophagy, viruses can't live off their own energy source. So they have to
Yep.
live off of your energy source. And when you're in autophagy, the virus will die. It can't
Mm.
replicate. But
Yeah.
if you're in sugar burning mode, it can gain energy from that and can start to replicate, which is mind blowing. So
Yeah.
I love autophagy fasting. Then 24 hours is all about the gut. It's the research was done showing that intestinal stem cells will reboot themselves at
Yep.
24 hours. So anybody with candida, parasites, SIBO, if you want to repair your microbiome after antibiotics, those kind of things can be incredible. Just throwing 24-hour fasts in.
Mm. Yep.
I recently saw some research on the 24-hour fast that they followed a group of people over 4.5 years and met both men and women. And they found that even if they did one 24-hour fast a month over a course of 4.5 years, their markers for chronic disease in that 4 years went away.
Yeah, I'm
And
not surprised at all. Yeah.
that's only one a
Just
month.
one a month. Yeah. Because your body's just regenerating itself at such a high level.
Yeah.
This is why, like, one of my goals is to help people get to the point where they can do a 1 day fast. And I usually say between 20 and 24 hours, somewhere in that range, once a week, right?
Yeah.
Where they have
Agreed.
the ability to do that. Now, they may choose not to based on where they're at in their cycle, but, that's a practice that they can follow, for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think actually we could end chronic disease if
Yeah. Yeah.
people start, the food industry is so horrific, but that's a slow moving target for us to make changes
Right.
there.
True.
We can change chronic disease right now by getting people doing once a week of 24-hour fasts, even once a
Yeah.
month. But once you train somebody to fast, going 24 hours once a week is not that hard either.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have a huge impact on all your metabolic health scores, right? So, I mean, you're not going to be diabetic if you are doing that on a week to week basis, right?
Right.
Which cuts down your risk of heart disease, all these other types of issues. It's going to get rid of most autoimmunity
Yep.
because you're getting that autophagy factor. Yeah, I've been saying about 95% of chronic disease would go away if everybody would do that. I leave a little bit of room because there are some, strange cases and people that have had tremendous amounts of toxicity built up into their system and things like
Yeah,
that.
well said.
But that's
Yeah,
more
well
the
said.
exception, and so most people, if you really improve your metabolic flexibility and you're able to do this and carry it out over time, just we'll see phenomenal, incredible results.
Yeah,
So
yeah, agreed. And then that once you go longer, so I've found 36 hours is the one that unsticks weight loss. I don't the science isn't there to show that exactly, but it's just what I've seen in fasting so many, especially women, that when you throw a 36-hour fast in timed around your cycle
mhm,
appropriately, it's that thing that starts to get them losing weight. So
yeah,
I
for
love
sure.
that. 48 hours is there's great research showing two things. One is it resets your dopamine pathways. So
Mm,
you actually open up dopamine receptor sites. And you create more new dopamine pathways. And this is
yeah.
crazy important for menopausal women because a lot of menopausal women that I talk to say, I don't experience joy like I used
Mm.
to experience joy. And so if we can get her to do 48-hour fasts once a month, once every couple of months, now we're resetting those pathways.
Yeah.
It's pretty profound. We've also
Yeah.
seen anti-aging antioxidants get amplified when it was all based off the Krebs cycle,
Mhm.
looking at when somebody was under 48 hours and this group was actually hospitalized. So they took all the variables out so that they just kept them and measured their blood work. And they saw consistently at 48 hours that the Krebs cycle started to spit out more antioxidants that were necessary for slowing the aging process down.
Yeah, so cool. It's
Profound.
amazing what's
So,
happening. Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
cool. And then the 72-hour fast is Walter Longo's, beautiful,
Yeah.
reset your immunity. I look at 72-hour fasting for those that want stem cells. They want to maybe repair a musculoskeletal injury,
Mhm.
and just don't know what to do with their health. Just like throw a 72-hour fast at them.
Yeah.
And those are kind of my favorite. There's dry fasting. There's uh, Walter Longo's fast mimicking. So there's not a lot of other styles that I talk about in the book, but those six are my favorite.
Yeah, it's so great. It's amazing what happens in the body when we just take away, this constant input, just take
Yeah.
stress off the gut. And, it's amazing to think how much of a stressor food is on our body. Obviously, we need it, but taking periods of time without it can be just so incredibly healing, and it doesn't cost anything, right? It's free. It
Right.
just really just takes mindfulness and a little bit of willpower, and ideally doing it in a community. I know that's one of the benefits that you offer is you have a great community that helps support. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So one thing I found in my journey is that when you look at, and I write about it in the book, if you look at how hormones work, they work in a hierarchy. So
Yeah.
certain hormones will trump other hormones. And ironically, or not, I don't know, surprisingly, let's say, oxytocin is at the top of the
Mm,
hormonal hierarchy. So oxytocin will keep cortisol under control. If you get your cortisol under control, you'll become more insulin sensitive. And once you become more insulin sensitive, now you have a better opportunity of balancing estrogen,
yeah.
progesterone, and testosterone. So because of that, I was like, okay, well, how do I take the principles of fasting and get some more oxytocin. And so community, that's a great
Yeah.
way to get oxytocin. So we built a community of fasters, and we fast once a month. We call it Fast Training Week, and I lead different fasts. It's both men and women in the group, and we call it Fast Training Week. And it grew over the last year from like 1,000 people to 40,000 people, all
Wow.
doing
Yep.
this together. It's
Amazing.
super fun.
Yep.
So community is important. I don't understand why we do health isolated. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. Getting that oxytocin boost. And some the other ways to boost up oxytocin would be hugging, right?
Yep.
Just giving people hugs, right?
Yep.
Laughing with people,
Yeah.
connecting with people. It's our connection hormone. So,
Yeah.
and that helps lower cortisol, which again keeps your stress hormones balanced, and that's super
Yeah.
critical.
I've used the thought of oxytocin to my advantage in several ways. If you come home at the end of the day, if you don't have enough progesterone, it's hard to
Mhm.
calm yourself down. There's this moment, and then a lot
Mm,
of women reach for wine or food because they're trying to calm themselves. So I started doing different things like petting my dog and like spending time hanging with my dog. I use it to my advantage with my 18-year-old son, where, I'll walk in the door and be like, I just need a hug because
yeah.
I need an oxytocin boost. So when you start to see what oxytocin can do for you and all the fun ways you can stimulate it, it gets to be a really cool hormone.
That's so good. So good to know for sure. Well, Mindy, this has been a wonderful interview. It's been, a lot of great nuances when it comes to fasting. And, I mentioned before the interview, I'm a fasting evangelist, right? My listeners
Yeah.
know that. And so it's always great to speak with another fasting evangelist
Yes.
and
Yes.
share our tools and
Yeah.
our things that we're learning. So it's been
Yeah.
really, really good. And guys, the book is The Menopause Reset. If you're watching on YouTube, I've got it right here. Again, short book. I mean, you could literally read this in maybe 2 hours at
Yeah.
most, probably.
Yep.
And you'll walk away with so many great principles. I mean, she really just lays it out. Like every single chapter is, in fact, once you start reading it, you probably won't want to put it down, right? So
Yeah.
you'll just
Thank
finish
you.
it. Give yourself two
Yeah.
hours, block it off, and just
Yeah.
read the whole thing.
It's
You walk
you know
out.
what's funny about the book is that it was my followers that were like, "Can you put down what you
Mm,
did?" As I started, so I did, and then I was thinking, well, if you're going to help women, menopausal women who already have a lot of brain fog and struggling, have busy lives, I'm like, I need to make this book straight to the point, short,
right.
inspiring. So I put it that way on purpose so that women could devour it and then apply it.
Yeah, and that's so good. That's something that I struggle with. I want to give the whole picture, right? So,
I know. I
so
know.
I like it. I like it. No, it's so good. So, guys, the book is The Menopause Reset. Definitely check it out. We'll have a link in the show notes, and check out Dr. Mindy's podcast as well, the Resetter podcast, her website, drmindypelz.com. Check that out as well. And Dr. Mindy, any last words of inspiration for our audience?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said when we started, I just so grateful for the work you're doing. I'm excited to bring you on my
Yeah.
podcast and
Yeah.
introduce you to my community. I think we need more voices amplifying the power of the human body. And, my last piece of advice is, and your listeners most likely know this, is the body is a miracle. And when you learn how to fast, and for women, when you learn how to fast around your cycle, you'll be blown away. You'll be blown away at what your body was designed to be. You were not meant to go into depression and not sleep at 50. And if you change your lifestyle, that will change.
There it is, folks. Great interview. Thanks, Dr. Mindy. Guys, check
My
out her
pleasure.
site, check out her book, and we'll see you on a future podcast. Be blessed, everybody.